and welcome to the second episode of the WMUN podcast. I'm Karina Torres, the president of WMUN.
And I'm Karina Garcia, the International Outreach Director for North America.
And once again, welcome. So WMUN is very committed to making Model UN as accessible for women and girls as possible. Our goal for this podcast is to be able to just casually discuss our experiences, what to expect, and just general information about topics that relate to Model UN and for women by women. So today we're going to talk about the things that we love and also things that we don't exactly love about Model UN. So would you like to start?
I would. Let's start off positively with the things that we love about Model UN. I love that for every Model UN conference, we have these things called candygrams where they're like little notes that you can write to other delegates in your committee, either friends that you've met or people on your team. You can write them to people in your committee or in other committees, just kind of encouraging little words. But those candygrams cost money because basically that money, where it goes to, is a charity of their choice. And because everybody tends to participate in candygrams, they end up making a lot of money to be able to support these local charities. That's cool.
It's great. It's like a philanthropic thing. I think another really cool thing about candygrams is the fact that they're read out loud. So some interesting things are said in conferences, both good and bad. So they're very, very funny and just great to receive. Personally, something that I love is just how many people you meet and the friends that you're able to make. Me and Karina met through Model UN. Like, we just happened to live nearby each other, but we met in, like, a conference, actually my first conference ever, and we still talk, we still communicate, we do this stuff together, and it's amazing.
Yeah. We met at Mixon. It was a lot of fun. That reminds me, we actually met doing the Commission on the Status of Women, which is very fitting. And something that they did there was introduce, protecting indigenous rights. So a lot of conferences, what they do is they have the Secretary General or another one of their staff kind of come in, similar to a crisis update, but give us a little note on what they want us to talk about in committee. So for instance, obviously we're talking about women's rights, but not just women in general, also focusing on protecting indigenous rights. So just kind of cool that they come in and they guide us in some sort of direction so we can increase awareness and talk about different topics.
Yeah, I love that we get to cover so many issues very extensively. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of things, especially like indigenous rights, different minority groups and stuff like that a lot of their issues kind of get overshadowed by something else. And so it's great that Model UN and the people in Model UN really make it a priority to empower their voices, amplify their voices, and just make sure that their issues are heard by everyone.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there are so many. I think the way to tackle certain issues sometimes, like when it comes to indigenous rights, indigenous women's rights, or LGBTQ plus women's rights, they have to be tackled in a sort of different way because these are marginalized groups whose voices have been shut down before. So obviously it's easy for us to lose sight of that and in committee be we're gonna obviously increase women positivity, but increasing women positivity comes with increasing all women positivity. Yeah. And in doing that, you have to recognize that there are other groups that aren't just like us but are different than us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think another thing that I love, which is kind of stupid, but I love getting to dress up. I love Karina. What she does is that she goes she does dual dolls, right? And she goes with matching colors and everything, and it's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. Personally, since I usually do single dolls, I just basically try to make myself the most funky looking person in the room so that people remember me. Yeah. So it's great. I love getting dressed up and looking all cute and
I love it. I agree. I think there's something really cool about Model UN culture is just so fun and interesting. Everybody who does Model UN, they're all very educated kids. You're spending hours in a conference room talking about global issues. It's very serious stuff, and you have to be very educated and dedicated to do that, which is all Model UN delegates. But something that's really cool that separates Model UN from speech and debate or HOSA or those clubs is the attire. that kind of fun, like you get to dress up. And then if you do crisis, you get to dress up, I don't know, if there's like a Spider-Man committee, you can dress up as like Spider-Man. So I think stuff like that is really cool, and I feel like it brings Model UN delegates together.
It brings the characters to life, and it also puts us in the position of being delegates, of being diplomats. So I think it's great. So now some unsavory things that we do not like about Model UN.
Okay. Oof. I know last episode we talked about sort of how, I guess how some delegates, I would say like there's a lot of issues that arise within like delegates, like I would say like power delegates as well. We call them gavel chasers, like it's just people who are in Model UN just to kind of win, just to make it look good on applications, rather than actually trying to be diplomatic, wanting to hear everybody's voices. A lot of times what these power dels do is that they kind of shut down the people around them, kind of make it seem like they care, they don't really care, and they just want to like get the award and get out of there, which is not really what Model UN was intended for. And a lot of chairs don't really notice because it's tens and tens of people in this room, and it's a pair, one person doing this, but it kind of leaves a sour taste on the other delegates' mouth because we are the ones who have to interact with those people.
Yeah, it can definitely ruin a committee.
For sure.
I've been in committees where entire blocks have been power dels, and it's intense. It's not great. So yeah.
And it sucks for a lot of reasons. Like, it's not even just that like your own voice is being powered down, but like your whole blocks. Like a lot of times what these blocks do is they'll get like a super majority of people, so their paper can for sure pass. And then with everybody else, like every other block, they won't vote for it. So like the big block will win, and then like every other block goes.
It just creates a really unhealthy power imbalance, and it's not fun.
At all.
I think another thing that I just really can't stand about Model UN is some people who just complain about Model UN being Model UN. And what I mean by that is like the people who'll be like, why are we even discussing like sponsor lists or like stuff like that? And I'm like, they'll complain to like the chair about it, and I'm like, dude, one, you're making your block look bad, and two, it's like this is just Model UN stuff. You know, this is just procedural stuff that sure maybe is not as important as like putting your ideas on paper or diplomacy, creating solutions, but they're just things that have to be done. And are just part of the experience of Model UN, and I think that some people just like they just can't deal with it. And it's the most annoying thing ever.
Especially in General Assembly, like General Assembly is an actual thing. Like people actually do this. This is actual procedure that we didn't just decide off of a whim. Like one person wasn't just like, oh, at 9:45 is 12 speakers. Like no, it actually happens. And I think it's cool that we're exposed to like the real deal procedure. Because for a lot of people, myself included, like I would like to enter diplomacy when I'm older, and so I think it's cool to give us something that like as real of a simulation as possible to the actual United Nations.
Yeah, I think another thing also kind of going along with the whole procedural Model UN people, one of my main issues is when I have to teach someone how to write a resolution paper in GA. This is my thing. I actually don't mind it if we're in a high school conference or it's a small block. If I am in a committee where it's like 20 people, my block is like 4 or 5 people, or it's a high school conference and it's meant for a beginner, then I'm fine with it. But if it's like in GatorMUN, which if you don't know, GatorMUN is like a 900 person like conference. It's a big conference, important, prestigious conference. I can't sit there in a block of like 30, like 20 people just teaching a couple people how to write a paper, especially because resolution papers are so, I guess, technical. So it's like, I'm sorry, I have to write my own stuff.
I agree. I had completely blanked out on like another point I wanted to bring up, and that reminded me. I think some conferences do it, some don't, where like in terms of like teaching delegates before the conference starts, procedure and how to write papers. Obviously, there's not enough time to teach them every little thing, but I think, and it's interesting because I noticed that smaller conferences tend to teach, and then larger conferences don't. But a lot of the time, like schools where like they have younger delegates who are now participating, their first times tend to be these larger conferences. Like they're like Gatorman, you will see a bunch of novices, like people who are like this is their first time. And it sucks too because in committee they don't tend to give us enough time for us to write our own stuff and teach other people. Like I haven't been to a single conference where I like haven't had to teach somebody else. Exactly. And I'm happy to do it. It just takes a long time. So I think having workshops in the beginning, like some conferences tend to incorporate, is helpful.
Definitely. I've been to MUNC, which is the U Chicago Model Young Conference. They had like whole workshops, and I think that's great. I understand that not every conference has the ability to do this, but especially those bigger conferences that are more competitive, I think it's great.
Anyways,
moving on from that. I guess that's our time to close.
It is. So, any closing remarks? Thank you so much for tuning in to the second episode of the Women in WMUN podcast. We're glad you're here. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.